We're looking here at a SketchUp model that we use to test new components, new examples of plant species or ones that could be used in new SketchUp designs. And we've been asked to make a little movie on how do you get this base information from gCADPlus into SketchUp, and that's the focus of this little movie. Well, I've switched to gCADPlus and I've set up a whole series of pavers of differing size. This one is 400 by 400 and the others vary. I'm working in, of course, millimeters. The important thing when you are developing a gCADPlus drawing to move into SketchUp is to use layers, because the layers will come across and can be very useful in what is often a very crowded model in SketchUp. So the dimensioning is placed on layer L dim and the pavers themselves on a layer L hardscape pavers. Let's move on. Well, I've moved back into SketchUp just for a moment, and what we're now going to create in gCADPlus is that path. It's done with one large format paver and one small paver. So let's go back to gCADPlus. Well, in gCADPlus, I've made a couple of blocks. This first one, a block called 1200 by 400 paver, and on the layer that we've just been talking about. And here's another one, 400 by 400 paver. So 2 blocks here. What I've then done is taken those 2 blocks together, and I've used the mirror command and mirrored them up here. Notice the position of the block, the origin of that block's been rotated, whereas this one here works in the opposite direction. So now it's just going to be a matter of copying those up. I think I measured in SketchUp 900 millimeters, 7.9 meters, and that will make our path. So the best tool for doing that would be the array command. So modify and array, and we're going to do a rectangular array with, I counted in SketchUp 7 rows. The row offset would be 1 meter. Just select the objects like so, hit enter, and we can OK it. So there's the array command in one click. We've developed the path. So I'll save the gCADPlus drawing at this point. The next step will be to create the garden bed and then the wall that runs there, and maybe a lawned area under the pavers. But that's a good next step, I think, on our journey towards making a gCADPlus drawing that we can bring into the SketchUp environment. Well, our test model has a 1500 millimeter wide garden bed, so I've just offset that line, and we've got a 230 millimeter double brick wall running here, and there are 2 ways to get this information into SketchUp. One is to export a raster image, a high resolution image file, and if we're going to do that, we need to include a scale bar, because as we bring the image into SketchUp, we will need to scale it so that we build a model on that image. The other way is to use our file and DXF tools and gCADPlus DXF out, and we'll send a DXF file or save a DXF file from this gCADPlus model, and we'll demonstrate both methods. But first, let's generate a raster image, and that's done by tools and make a raster. You have, in this case, I'm going to the desktop, but you can choose the type of image, and you can select, say, a rectangle. But if you want to change the type of image, here's a drop-down list. You can use JPEG. We find that a JPEG image is the most useful, and we'll put it on the desktop, and we'll call this export raster, and click save. The next thing to watch is the size of the image. We want to pump this number up here, the resolution up, until we get an image of about 7,000 or 8,000 pixels across. So let's see what we get with 72. You can see 47,000. So we just drop that number, say, down to 25, and we get 10,000 or 16,000 rather. And I don't think gCADPlus can manage that. So we'll go to 12 and 7,800. So we'll try that. We're going to have a high resolution raster image. So we'll use rectangle, and I had forgotten that bit, pick. We do need to include that scale bar, and now you can see the size has dropped. So we'll probably be able to go to 25 dpi, maybe 35, and I think gCADPlus might manage it. We'll see. We want to get the largest image we can. And it's been saved now to the desktop, so we can import that into SketchUp and scale it and build our model on this image. And alternatively, we can say File, DXF Tools, DXF Out, and we'll try going our DXF out. I've rehearsed it. So now we have the two types of files ready for the next stage in SketchUp. Here we are in the SketchUp environment. Let's select this little icon and get rid of him. And he's gone. And now we should be able to file and import. What we want is an image type. We've got one that we just generated called export raster, and we can bring it in and anchor it at that position. Can you see these scale? SketchUp wants to dynamically indicate it. We've got our scale bar, so as long as we go past there, we should be fine. I'll swing to a plan view, and we now want to scale this image so that it reads accurately. The way to do that is to take your measure tool, zoom in, and we know from this point here across to that point there should be 5 meters. It's currently reading 4145. So just to rescale it, type the 5,000, hit enter, and yes, we do want to resize the model. And let's just use our measurement tool just to double check. This should be a 400, and we're close-ish, I think. I'll just escape from there, zoom in and try that again, getting as close to that edge as I can, and that is there's 397. So I'm happy that we've got this scaled nicely. At that point we can go into perspective mode and start building the model. I think at this stage you should follow the same principles as we do in gCADPlus, and we're going to build a model. So I'd be making a layer, making it current, and putting the new model. We're not interested in the scale bar. We just want to build a model on that information that is contained in the image file itself. So I've moved into a plan view. I've created a new layer. I've called it model based on scaled images, and I've made it current by clicking in the circle to the left, so it's current. We should now be able to begin making the equivalent of a block. We'll make a component and then copy it. So let me zoom in here. We probably need two components, row 1 and row 2, and from that point on we can just copy them up here. So I shall move, you take the hand tool and just move it up a little, and we'll hopefully be able to take the rectangle tool, and remember that what we're after is a representation of our design ready to show the client. So we now have faces on here. While we're at it, we'll do exactly the same up here. So these faces are now on a new layer, and we're going to build a model based on them, but what we are going to do is turn them into components. Well, I've made two components now. If I click on this one in the components palette, it's referred to as row 1, and if I click on this one, it's row 2. Sorry, that's row 2, this is row 1. To make a component, let me demonstrate. So two have been made. If we wanted to make this one and call it row 3, just select them and make a component and fill that information out. It's useful to make sure that any component here, when you're using paving, is glued to a horizontal surface. But I digress. We're interested now in building this model up. I think from now, perhaps the easiest way is to do as you would do in gCADPlus. Grab those components. Here's the move or copy, and notice down in the we find in the status line control to toggle copy and so on. So we hold the control key down as we move. So we pick up this base point and just move it up and drop it in position. Now if we zoom out a little more, we can get this lot holding our control key down and move those up, zoom in so we can get, so we're getting a very accurate model. Now I'm sure you can manage to do that, but can you see the model is taking shape nicely. Each one of these is a component. We can later on edit that if we want, but if we put camera and view and put shadows on, because these don't have any depth yet, they're not thick, the shadows won't be cast, but we can edit that and get it to work nicely. But at this stage, you'd want to go back into the plan view, and this is a 230mm wide wall, and so do the same thing, come in here. We're still on our correct layer. I think we can hold like you do in gCADPlus. No, that's going to show not what I'm after. I'll escape from there. And we want a plan view, and we're in the correct layer. I don't quite know how we managed to get two copies of the scale bar, but that would require editing. That's in the image, which is, we want to be able to see the whole of this. So we click there and come up to here, and we're done. And you might want to put a small piece of timber across here to mark it as a hold for the garden bed. So we're taking shape nicely now. To get that 230mm wide wall, just a matter of picking the face, selecting the face, use the push-pull tool and slide it up and let's imagine it's 1800 high. Type the value, then swing back. Can you see I'm starting to build up this shape, and we've turned shadows on, but if we set a location and time of the day, the shadows would be cast nicely. I am puzzled by the appearance of that scale bar, so that should be on layer 0. So let's go back into plan view and zoom out. I think that's some sort of drafting error on my part. Go into our parallel projection here. We've made model based on scaled image. We can take that out, and if we turn off that one, we can't do that. Can we turn off this? Can't. Oh, back on layer 0. Turn off our new model. Somehow we've put our image on the wrong layer, so that's my mistake, not yours. But I think it's better for you to see me make mistakes than for me to give a very smooth presentation. I need to work on how to fix that. Well, I've managed to recover from my error by making sure I'm on the correct layer when I add new components, but we are essentially complete. We've got ourselves a very simple model that loads very quickly. We can render it in any sort of rendering package. We can put some color on this garden bed if we want, drop our plants in here. We might put some texture on that wall, but what we do have is a test bed, and we can drop our plant symbols onto it and render. Well, I've gone into a plan view and gone File and Import and set the files of type to SKP or SketchUp files. Let's go back into a perspective view and we'll spin around, and we'll just now do a quick render to see what we've got. We do not wish to upgrade just yet. 800 by 600 will make the resolution high, and we're done, and render it. The rendering's taking place. We might zoom in a little as we repeat it, but there we are. There's our image. So what I would now do, we'll just close the current render job. We don't want to save it, but what we are interested in doing is, can we zoom in? And I'm in the process of zooming in, and suddenly SketchUp is very, very sluggish, and that makes me wonder a lot about this particular SketchUp model. So we'll do one final render. I think it will render relatively quickly, but the model, moving around in the model and zooming in, is incredibly sluggish. So it's quite a nice representation of a DNLer, but I would not use it because of the sluggishness of SketchUp. What we're trying to do is get little images that are not images. We want plant models which will load, enable us to move around and render quickly. We want both bases covered. So I hope that's a good little introduction to taking an image file from gCADPlus and putting it into SketchUp. The second way to bring information into SketchUp is to simply load that file that we exported earlier, and we say import, and we can change the files of type. By default, we were trying to import SketchUp files, but here I'm using a DWG DXF import, and we wrote out a DXF file, a drawing exchange file, and we called it our test DXF, and we said open, and we closed. You can see how quickly that information came across, and in contrast to the slightly tedious work we had to do when we were building a SketchUp model on the image, this time layering comes across nicely. If I click here, can you see here's our hardscape and our hardscape pavers. Everything is laid out very nicely. And if we set layer 0 off by ticking the little box, see all the layers came across beautifully. The whole image disappears. So once we grab the whole information that's come across from gCADPlus, notice it's just one block and it's on layer 0. You can, just as you do in gCADPlus, we can pick and explode. It's effectively a single block that came across. Once we've done that, it's almost as though we're in the gCADPlus environment. So we can pick this 400 by 400 and in the entity information, that's the name 400 by 400. Pick this one, and this is 1200 by 400. So all of the blocks that are in the gCADPlus model come across correctly. And what you can then do, of course, is that's a component or a block, we can edit it. And we're now looking inside it, and we can just take our notice that I simply put a face inside that block, and all the way through the whole of the path, every instance of that block is updated. And we've got a stone paver, so we can take our bucket and do that. So can you see how easy it is? Let me zoom out a little. In 3 or 4 clicks, we've taken what was in gCADPlus and brought it across into this environment. Now, that's nice. It's easy and works extremely well. The downside is that you have to have some sort of plug-in or get SketchUp Pro, which allows you to bring in this sort of information. So that's the second way of creating SketchUp models quickly and easily, exporting a drawing exchange file from gCADPlus and bringing it into the SketchUp environment. And it's very easy for us to edit within this quickly established model.